You're here because something inside you knows it's time for a change. Not because you need someone to pump you up with temporary motivation. Not because you're looking for quick fixes or easy answers. You're here because you're ready to see through the stories you've been telling yourself. The narratives about who you are and what you're capable of that have been holding you back all along. These aren't just minor doubts. They're elaborate constructions you've built over years, brick by brick, until you started believing they were the foundation of your identity. But here's the truth. If you're willing to sit with discomfort, if you're willing to examine the parts of yourself you've kept locked away, something fundamental will shift. What emerges won't be some new, improved version of you. It will be the person who was always there, waiting beneath the surface for you to stop protecting your limitations. Let's establish something right from the start. The philosophers who explored human potential most deeply, thinkers like Nietzsche, they weren't writing self-help for the perpetually comfortable. They wrote for people ready to face reality without flinching. People exhausted by their own excuses. People who finally understood that nothing external was coming to rescue them, and who decided to stop waiting for permission to begin. If you've reached that point, if you're done with the fear, the passivity, the constant apologizing, the inflation of minor emotions into major obstacles, then this is your starting line. Not a transformation into someone new. A return to who you actually are. Because strength was never something you had to go out and find. It's been there all along, buried under layers of self-doubt, social conditioning, and the addiction to staying comfortable. So let's begin with a fundamental question. What does weakness actually mean? Most people think weakness is about crying too easily, being physically small, or lacking discipline. But that's a superficial understanding. Real weakness isn't about emotional expression. It's about emotional submission. Weakness is needing constant permission from others. It's outsourcing your sense of worth to people who barely understand themselves. Weakness is choosing comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. It's pretending you don't want something just to avoid being judged. It's calling your avoidance self-care, your fear humility, and your insecurity empathy. Weakness isn't the absence of strength. It's the active presence of self-betrayal. And here's what you need to understand. The modern world is engineered to keep you weak. Your education system trained you to obey without question. Your culture trained you to conform and blend in. Your media feeds you a constant stream of helplessness disguised as awareness. Even the people closest to you, many of them benefit from your softness, your silence, your hesitation. So they encourage it. They praise your selflessness. They reward your passivity. They applaud your restraint. Not because it's actually good for you, but because it keeps you small, predictable, dependent, and ultimately forgettable. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He observed how society molds you into a domesticated version of yourself. He wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." He wasn't talking about physical struggle. He meant the psychological battle to stay true to your instincts when the entire world demands you suppress them. The struggle to remain genuinely alive, not violent, not chaotic, but fully present and uncompromising, in a world that wants you polite, processed, and obedient. The first step in eliminating weakness is recognizing that you've been conditioned to confuse weakness with virtue. You've learned to believe that saying no is rude, that protecting your boundaries is selfish, that prioritizing yourself is narcissistic. But real philosophy flips that completely. Genuine strength, the kind that makes you magnetic, respected, and memorable, comes from rejecting mass thinking, rejecting false safety, and rejecting the compulsive need to be liked. So let me ask you something. Who are you without the need to be liked? Not theoretically. Actually, strip away all your social filters. Stop editing every word before it leaves your mouth. If no one required you to be nice, agreeable, humble, and passive, who would you be? What would you say? What would you demand? What would you walk away from immediately? Most people can't answer these questions because they've built their entire identity on reactions and feedback. They don't have a self. They have a mask, a carefully sculpted persona designed to fit in and survive. And this is what Nietzsche saw as the death of the human spirit. Because the moment you stop being genuinely yourself, the moment you start filtering your truth through a social system, you've already given up your power. But you can feel it already, can't you? That quiet resentment, that simmering frustration, that fatigue that doesn't disappear no matter how much you sleep. That's not burnout. That's the cost of weakness, the price of living in a way that constantly silences your deeper instincts just to keep the surface smooth. Here's what the philosophy of strength would tell you. You weren't born to be soft. You weren't born to tolerate everything. You weren't born to fold every time someone challenges you. You were born to embody something sharper, something more primal, not chaotic but unshakable, not reckless but untouchable. The reason you feel weak is that you've denied this part of yourself for so long that you've started to believe it never existed. But it did, it does, and we're going to excavate it right now. Let's examine your daily habits, because weakness lives in routine, in subtle daily rituals that slowly erode your willpower while convincing you everything's fine. Nietzsche wrote, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." Think about that. You wake up and immediately check your phone. Already, you've lost. Not because phones are inherently bad, but because you didn't claim the day. You surrendered it before it even began. You scroll, compare yourself to others, feel envy, and then rationalize it all. You tell yourself it's harmless. But every single time you react before you create, you weaken the muscle of self-governance. You become mentally flabby. You lose your edge. You lose command. So let's change that. Start owning your mornings before you touch a screen. Check your posture. Check your breathing. Remind yourself that you're not primarily a consumer. You're a creator, a builder, a strategist. Your energy isn't available to algorithms the second you open your eyes. Next, your speech. Weakness reveals itself in how you water yourself down to make people comfortable. How you speak softly so they won't feel threatened. How you say, "I don't know," when you actually do know. How you apologize for things that require no apology whatsoever. You're leaking power constantly, and people can sense it. That's why they don't truly listen to you. That's why they talk over you. That's why they consistently underestimate you. Nietzsche didn't whisper. He wrote with fire, and he expected the same from anyone serious about life. Not to be loud, but to be clear. Clarity is force. Clarity makes people pause and lean in. If your presence doesn't do that yet, you have work to do, not because you're broken, but because you've been hiding. Stop hiding. Own your perspectives. State them cleanly. Don't explain them to death. Let the silence after you speak carry weight. Most people are terrified of silence. You won't be, because silence creates tension. And tension is how genuine respect is earned. Now let's address emotion. You think strength means feeling nothing. That's completely wrong. That's dysfunction. Nietzsche didn't teach emotional numbness. He taught emotional mastery. That means you can feel everything and still choose your response. You don't react impulsively. You respond with intention. When someone disrespects you, you don't explode. You don't chase them for explanations. You don't defend yourself desperately. You simply observe. You wait. And when you do move, it's calculated, it's precise, it's surgical. That is strength. Weakness is emotion without awareness. Strength is emotion under deliberate control. So stop saying, "I'm just an emotional person." That's not true. You're just undisciplined. And discipline isn't cold, it's clean, it's precise. It's the difference between crying in a breakdown and crying with purpose. The first makes you a victim. The second makes you human. Speaking of victims, Nietzsche had strong views about victimhood. He believed it was the modern form of slavery. Not physical slavery, psychological slavery. The need to blame, to wait for rescue, to justify stagnation by pointing to past trauma. He didn't deny that pain exists. He denied the passivity that follows pain. Here's what you do. Stop telling your story like it's a tragedy. Stop reciting your traumas as if they're your identity. Stop weaponizing your pain to extract sympathy from others. Instead, start transmuting it into something harder than steel. Because here's the brutal truth. Nobody truly cares what happened to you. Not really. They care what you became despite it. And if all you became was bitter, anxious, and fragile, then you let your story defeat you. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But here's the secret. Your why isn't found lying around somewhere. It's chosen. You don't wait to discover it. You decide it. You carve it into your daily existence. The moment you do this, weakness begins to dissolve. Because when you know your direction, distractions die. Drama fades away. Doubt becomes background noise. And weakness loses its grip on you entirely. So decide right now. Who do you serve? What are you building? What do you protect? What will you absolutely not tolerate for one more day? Make it real. Write it down. Make it non-negotiable. Because if you don't choose your own purpose, the world will assign you one. And it will be weak. It will be soft. It will keep you obedient, financially struggling, and completely forgettable. But that's not your destiny. Not anymore. You've made it this far, which means something crucial. You're not like most people. Because most people can't sit still when someone touches their weakness. They flinch, they click away, they chase another quick distraction. They pretend they already knew all this, but you're still here. And that means something inside you is beginning to wake up. Something ancient, something raw, something that's been buried. Nietzsche didn't just write about power. He wrote about what makes people afraid of it. He understood that weakness isn't just physical or mental, it's existential. It's rooted in the stories you've accepted, the definitions you've inherited, the quiet agreements you made with fear before you even understood what fear was. One of the deepest roots of weakness is the fear of being alone. Let's examine that. You've spent your entire life trying to belong. School trained you to raise your hand for permission. Friends trained you to stay inside the tribe. Family trained you to suppress what's inconvenient. Relationships trained you to be agreeable, non-threatening, soft around the edges. Gradually, you became addicted to acceptance. Not love, acceptance. That dead, passive form of inclusion that requires you to shrink, silence yourself, and constantly shapeshift just to be tolerated. But Nietzsche would look you directly in the eye and say, "You must be willing to stand alone, utterly, completely, if you're ever to truly know yourself." Because the truth is that belonging has a price, and most people pay with their authenticity, their strength, their individuality. But not you, not anymore. You're going to unlearn this addiction to belonging. You're going to become someone who doesn't beg for a seat at anyone's table. You're going to build your own table. And if no one joins you, good, more room, more space, more clarity. That's your first major upgrade, solitude over submission. Now let's go deeper. Why do you procrastinate? Why do you sabotage yourself? Why do you delay the very things you know will make you better? Most people think it's laziness. It's not. It's a hidden loyalty, a psychological contract you made long ago to stay small so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Somewhere in your past, you learned that shining too brightly made people pull away. You learned that power came with distance, that honesty came with punishment, that ambition came with loneliness. So you adapted. You learned how to dim your light, how to delay your progress, how to talk yourself out of your own momentum just to keep things safe and familiar. That's not laziness. That was survival, but it's time to break that contract because you're not here to be tolerated. You're here to be felt, and that requires intensity. It requires decisiveness. It requires the kind of clarity that makes average people uncomfortable. Nietzsche wrote, "The snake which cannot cast its skin must die." That's what weakness really is, the refusal to evolve because you fear who you might lose if you do. Now you're going to shed that skin. Not gently, not slowly. You're going to rip it off. The people pleaser, the second guesser, the overthinker, the emotional translator who constantly interprets their own feelings for others. Gone. Let's get tactical. Start with your language. Every time you say, "I don't know," when you actually do know, you reinforce uncertainty in yourself. Every time you say maybe when you mean no, you fracture your own integrity. Every time you apologize for existing, for interrupting, for needing anything, you chip away at your own foundation. Speak clearly. Don't soften your words. Don't qualify everything. Don't filter yourself constantly. People will say you're rude. Let them, that's just a reflex from people who got comfortable with you making yourself small. And you're done with that. Next, your body. Weakness hides in posture, in how you sit, how you move, how you breathe. Most people live like prey. Shoulders slumped, eyes down, breathing shallow. You can read someone's entire life story in their physical frame, but now you're changing yours. Stand like someone who knows they're being watched. Walk like someone who expects to be followed. Sit like someone who isn't asking for permission. Every room you enter, you dominate, not through force, but through presence. Presence comes from certainty, and certainty comes from alignment. So ask yourself, what do I believe in so deeply that I would walk away from anything that doesn't honor it? Write it down, carry it with you. Live by it. Let it bleed into everything you do. Now let's eliminate something else, victimhood. Nietzsche despised the modern tendency to glorify suffering. He saw it as a psychological trap. When you make your pain into your personality, you become addicted to weakness. You become loyal to your struggle. You find your identity in it. But here's the truth. No one truly cares what you survived. They care what you became because of it. And if all you became was bitter, anxious, and fragile, then you let your story win. So rewrite it. Don't say I'm a trauma survivor. Say I'm forged in fire. Don't say I was abused. Say I became unbreakable. Don't say I have anxiety. Say I've mastered stillness. Words are spells. Speak power or remain silent. Now let's close, because deep down you already knew everything I've said. Somewhere inside you, the real you, the grounded, clear, calm, powerful version, was listening to every word and recognizing it. Remembering what strength feels like, what clarity feels like, what it feels like to move without apology, to protect your energy the way a king guards his kingdom, to walk away from conversations that diminish you, to say no with your full chest, to say yes only to things that sharpen you, to sit in silence and feel no need to fill it. That's not motivation. That's home. You're back. But here's the catch. You can't unknow this now. You can't go back to being the version of you who made excuses, who delayed, who broke promises to himself, because now you know better. And when you know better, you either evolve or you lie to yourself. So choose. Become the person Nietzsche would respect, not the loudest, not the richest, not the most praised, the most real. The one who looks in the mirror and sees no hesitation, only presence. This is your standard now. Guard it like your life depends on it, because it does.